Hi there, it's Kate. Welcome back to my channel. I wanted to do a quick video today reviewing The Girl Who Smiled Beads, a story of war and what comes after by Clemantine Wamariya and Elizabeth Weil. This was a book that I read last month and I really enjoyed. Full disclaimer, have been interested in the Rwandan genocide for quite a while, starting from my undergraduate. I don't remember if I did undergraduate work on Rwanda, but certainly from the very beginning of when I started graduate work, I started looking at Rwanda. So I have an academic background, but it's primarily with the Western side of things as far as how intervention did or didn't go and why intervention did or didn't go. So I think at the end I'll conclude with a couple of recommendations for those types of books as well. But basically, let's talk about this book first. So The Girl Who Smiled Beads is a memoir from a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. Clementine was 6 years old during the 100 days. She escaped with her older sister Claire, leaving the rest of her family, her mother and father and older brother behind. They spent 6 years moving from one country to another in Africa before they were granted asylum in the United States. During this time, they didn't know the fate of their family that was left behind. The story is told in dual timelines. One recounts Claire's time after entering the United States, when she lived during the week with an affluent white family, and on the weekend she went to live with Claire. The other storyline begins with Clementine's childhood and takes her through their journey as she traveled through Africa and away from the killing in Rwanda. But the memoir tells not just the story of a genocide, also of war in general and refugees, because they spent so much time in the rest of Africa. And Clementine was, one of the things that I think is unique about this book is that Clementine was a child during the genocide, and she came of age and to grips with what she experienced during the relative safety and alien environment of the United States. She relates this surreal experience of learning about the genocide by reading a book, learning what was actually happening by reading a book, which is crazy. She didn't just experience the Rwandan genocide. In their flight across Africa, they experienced life in refugee camps and in other violent conflicts across the continent. So in this way, if you're looking for specific details about what happened in Rwanda, and the Hutus and the Tutsis and what was going on, this is not the book for you. This does not provide a lot of context, and in fact, it doesn't even mention any sort of racial conflict or ethnic differences, or even the Belgians, until about halfway through the book. And then it became clear that probably what it read to me like was an editor said, look, you need to give some sort of background about the conflict because otherwise no one's going to know what you're talking about. And that just was not the focus. This was more about Clementine and how she felt and what she experienced. It focuses on how she felt through the ordeal, and then as she tried to piece her life back together, and you see her desperation and her rage and her discontent with life in America and trying to come to terms with what her life was like now. It also relates the lessons that she learned, both while on the run and the lessons she had learned from her mother before leaving Rwanda, and how well those lessons held up as Clementine's worldview and experience evolved. So a lot of her mother's lessons revolved around religion. And Clementine, the more she saw of the world, the less she believed in religion. And finally, the book concludes with a statement, quote, "That's all a person can do, really. Let others live their lives on their terms and interrogate how you live your own. Insist on knowing the backstory to your gifts and your pain. Ask yourself how you came to have all the things you carry, your privilege, your philosophy, your nightmares, your faith, your sense of order and peace in the world." And that to me is what the book is actually about. It is about really tearing down what makes you who you are. And for Clementine, like, there's some pretty traumatic and unique events that make her who she is. But she never privileges those experiences over other people's. And she makes it clear that those experiences mean that she just views the world a different way. One of the strengths of the book is Clementine's recognition of her own privilege. Upon arriving in the U.S., she is taken in by a wealthy white family who is able to get her into a good school district, feed her and clothe her well, and generally just give her a life that isn't generally accorded to refugees when they arrive. While she recognizes that this fortune makes it possible for her to succeed, it also complicates her story even further. She's no longer just a refugee. She doesn't fit into that mold either. Her experiences with traditional American racism are different. She's very clearly African. She's very clearly Black, but she does not experience the same prejudices that others do, even her own sister. And this becomes something of a conundrum for her later on. And finally, I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most about this book is, although also something that made the book a little bit hard to believe, is that throughout the book, Clementine fails to play the blame game. It's most notably absent when she's talking about the genocide itself. She never talks about her own ethnicity. She never talks about the ethnicity of people that she knows. She makes it clear that young Clementine was unhappy with her role in the life that she and Claire coupled together as they sought refuge across America, but that's, even though she's unhappy at that time, she acknowledges that it's simply her feelings. It has nothing to do with Claire or with, she doesn't blame anybody for that. It's just the way that she feels. And similarly, she goes to college and then she returns to Africa on a college trip and sees Black Africa and how it kind of panders to white tourists and is upset by this. But she doesn't, again, blame either the Black Africans or the white tourists for this. She simply accepts that this is the way that it is. And on the one hand, that's very refreshing. This is not an angry memoir. And I think it would be very, very easy to write an angry memoir of a genocide. But on the other hand, while the book speaks of emotion often, it is unclear what Clementine's emotions are now and how she feels about things now. And I feel like that's natural. Like, I wouldn't know either. But on the other hand, I feel, I wonder if she were to write this book 20 years from now, how it would be different. And I think that it would. Ultimately, I don't feel that I have the right to criticize the way that she writes this book because I've not been through this. I don't know anybody who's even come close to being through anything like this. And so the fact that she was courageous enough to write it at all seems like a feat. And the fact that it was engrossing and told a really good story and had good lessons for the rest of the world is impressive. At the same time, it was an interesting mix of a lot of emotions and not quite enough. So overall, I would absolutely recommend this book. And if you've read it, I would love to discuss it because I think that there's a lot to discuss about it with someone who has read the book. So let me know if you have any questions. Leave comments down below. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.